Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Jurriaan Kamer. He is a future-oriented organizational change expert, co-founder of Unblocked, speaker, and author. Welcome to the show, Jurriaan.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome to the show, Jurriaan. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are talking right now. We'll be talking about the future of organizations. So before we understand the future of organizations, let's understand your past journey, your journey, so that people know who they are listening to and how much they have to listen to you.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I am currently an organizational change agent and expert, but I started out as an IT guy. I became obsessed and curious about computers very early on in my life, and but from there, so I started making websites, building software for the back end of websites. But then over time, I started becoming more obsessed with how do we get groups of humans to work together at scale. So I moved from computer and IT systems to human systems, and started taking on management roles, and then over time starting more interim and transformational roles. Yeah, been doing this work for a while now, and I'm still having fun.
Right, right, Julian. So where does Formula One come in? Means, were you into Formula One at any point in time, or you just brought it into your book and organizations and leadership? So I'm curious to know for the audience, where does it all come in together?
Yeah, so yeah, you're referencing my book called Formula X, which integrates lessons from the world of Formula One motor racing into the everyday life of normal organizations. Like not like uh, there's nothing that compares to the speed of innovation that Formula One teams have to operate on. And it started actually a long time ago. I was interested in Formula One for I think over 10 or 15 years ago already, when Michael Schumacher was still racing. But only when I visited the Red Bull Racing factory about 7 years ago, I think, that my mind got blown. I was able to go there and watch how they manufacture the cars, how they meet with each other, how they operate. And the first thing that struck me was the size of these teams. Most teams are over 1,000 people, and so 1,000 people have to work together to create one or two Formula One cars that they race throughout the season. And because these teams are so large, they this is becomes an interesting example for many other organizations, because they are wrestling with the same kinds of challenges that we have in our everyday organizations, right? So how do you get 1,000 people to work together and create this one beautiful product? And how do we become so innovative as a Formula One team? So yeah, it started out with a factory visit, and I started writing and speaking about it. And then my co-author Rini van Solingen was starting on a new book, and we eventually decided to write it together.
Right. So to simplify it, Julian, you mean you mean that organizations should look at smaller entities or becoming bigger entities? What is your understanding or recommendation on this?
I mean, it really depends on the challenge that the organization has in front of them. In general, it is smart. It's a very general abstraction, but in general, I would say if you can cut up something into small pieces, it is easier to manage. That's why there's many examples of companies that have split up into smaller units when they grow bigger, so that they can keep the startup spirit and the simplicity of scale while they grow. So yeah, like anything that becomes bigger becomes complex and slow. So if you can cut it up into pieces, that's usually better.
Absolutely. That's what a lot of governments are also saying, that there are some companies. You started your initial stages of your career in IT firms,
Hmm.
IT related things, and a lot of tech companies, are into this sort of a mode. Governments want to tell them, or are telling them to become smaller, but they want to become larger and larger, because and
Yeah.
their market capitalization is almost equal to some good big companies, countries, and several smaller companies, if countries, if I
Hmm.
understand. So I want to understand from you. You talk about Formula One.
Yeah.
Are organizations, becoming less of organizations and more of controlling entities? Because some organizations are looking at becoming bigger and bigger,
Hmm.
more from a control point of view. That's the impression a lot of people across the globe are getting. And whoever is coming even distantly close, they are either getting bought by some of these companies,
Yeah.
and all the technology is then wiped out, or it's just forgotten. So I
Hmm.
want to understand then, what when we are talking about the future of organizations, what what will an organization look like going forward, especially with artificial intelligence coming in,
Hmm.
and giving a lot of control in the hands of only a few companies, who will be deciding the fate of almost the whole of humanity. So help us understand, both
Yeah.
because you have experience of technology, both experience of change management, and both, so how do you see it from here on?
Right. How long is this podcast? You're asking a lot of big questions in a very short amount of time. No, but like those are great points. I think in general, there's a couple of things that you touched upon. First of all, the tendency of organizations to be mostly capitalist, right, based on capitalist principles, where um, the main thing that matters is to create wealth for the shareholders. That is starting to change, and that must change, I think, over time. I mean, there are much more forces out there than just becoming rich, right? We have a planet that is melting, the societies that are crippling. So the only we should move away from the idea that the capitalist movement is what is good for humanity. I don't think that is true. Of course, it's not a problem if shareholders get rich, but there are multiple stakes there that we need to consider when we are growing our organizations. So when you see governments trying to cut organizations into pieces, it is actually because they are not proper citizens of our society, right? They are sometimes misusing their interests to gain more power, and the government is actually trying to counterbalance that by cutting the organizations into pieces. So that's one element. The other element that you talked about was should organizations grow, and what do you think about AI? I think another big trend that is happening is we have to create organizations that are much more decentralized rather than being centralized. So in a traditional organizational structure, you see a management hierarchy which centralizes the power and authority in a small group of people. And the types of organizations that we see pop up now that are actually becoming really successful at scale, they use the opposite model, where they say, actually, you know what, we want to create small units of self-managing teams that are not bigger than 20 or 40 people, that can go out into the marketplace and do what they need to do. So they have a lot of authority at the edge of the organization. So the people and the teams that actually interact with the outside, with the market or with the customer, they are given the authority to act within certain boundaries, and that creates an organization where people that have the information are also able to make the right decisions and the right calls. And that makes these organizations adaptable because they can adapt quickly to what somebody from the market or from the customer is asking for, and they don't rely on this slow step-by-step management hierarchy to get things done. And I think my naive but optimistic view on things is that organizations that are able to adapt such a decentralized model will survive, while others will start to slowly degrade because they're unable to deal with the fast moving complexity of today.
You believe that the future is of smaller organizations, but what a lot of people fear is that it's only a few companies, especially who are dealing with technology, artificial
Yeah,
intelligence,
yeah,
they will be taking control of, even, they will have bigger powers than some sovereign nations.
yeah. Well, I think that's already the case. That's not something new. Like Google controls what we find on the internet. Facebook controls what we see our friends. Like WhatsApp is the biggest messaging tool in the world, and that's controlled by a private Silicon Valley based company that tries to make money for stakeholders, for shareholders, right? So that is not something new. So I think it's a healthy counterbalance that we look at those things closely. A lot of, especially in the European Union, there is a lot of regulation introduced as a way to balance it. Um, and in principle, I'm not necessarily against large organizations. What I was trying to say earlier was that an organization in itself should be in the inside cut into smaller autonomous units. So one example that is in my world of organizational innovation, one company that is doing it right now is a company from China, who is the biggest, the largest appliance manufacturer in the world, and with over 100,000 people, they are cut into over 4,000 self-managing units. And every person in that organization can become an entrepreneur, where they start a unit where they actually own shares in the company, and they're able to create their own team and test their own business model. So even though this is one huge conglomerate, the power is decentralized across all those smaller individual units, and that makes this company a highly innovative one and a highly successful one.
Right, right. So, as a change expert, do
Mm-hmm.
companies talk to you about how to achieve this, or they find this whole idea of smaller entities good, but very utopian, and that they do not have that much of power to bring this sort of a change within their organizations,
Mm-hmm.
even if they are CEOs, because they are only CEOs, they are not promoters, and promoters want more control. CEOs may want a bit more of, much more of
Uh-huh.
decentralization.
Yeah, I would say it's there's this saying which is like talking to the turkeys about Christmas. I don't know if that's the right translation. It's like we're going to, at Christmas we are going to slaughter the turkey, so we're talking to them. Like it's sometimes it is true that sometimes the people that are in power are not willing to give up the power. So this movement, while it sounds aspirational and inspirational to them, is like, well, actually that means I'm losing a lot of control and power and influence. Um, Personally, I think the more progressive thinkers can overcome that ego obstacle, which basically it is mostly ego driven, because they see that if they don't make that leap, their organization might not survive. So it's often the organizations that are still led by the founder that are able to make this leap, because they are, led by idealistic people that are, that want their legacy to survive over 100 years, while some of the appointed C-level people are just there to make a quick buck, or their main interest is to enrich the shareholders, right? So then this leap sounds daunting to them and difficult. And at the same time, there is an example currently of a big transformation project, of a global healthcare company called Bayer, where the newly appointed CEO is implementing this model, and he's taking some big, bold, brave steps to do it at a huge scale. So time will tell. Hopefully, that will become another lighthouse case of what is possible, and they'll be amazingly successful. But yeah, this type of organizations is still, in their early stages. Like, we're still discovering what works. It hasn't matured yet. And we've been talking about it for 50 years, and now finally we see some companies that are trying it.
Right. So let's understand through your book, your second book that you are working on.
Yeah.
Tell us the name of the book, and if you have decided on that. And secondly, how have you dealt this subject about? What is
Yeah.
this? Talk about leadership, and also, what sort of leadership can bring this sort of a thing? Because leadership itself is in crisis in the backdrop of the Great Resignation and quiet quitting. So everything nowadays
Hmm.
is in under some sort of a question mark. Let me understand, who is this
Yeah.
second book for them?
Yeah, thanks for asking. The title is not finally decided, but it's highly likely going to be called something like Unblock for Impact or Unblock Impact. The book is for leaders that have either just taken on a new role in the same or in a different organization, or they just realize that they need to double their impact. And they realize that the current way of working in their organization is not suitable for the shifting the gear to the next gear, higher gear that they need. So the book is all about unblocking barriers, organizational barriers for achieving more impact. And then traditionally, what we see leaders do is to if leaders are faced with a big urgent problem, they usually have a tendency to take control and to step in and to become introduce more management and more steering and controlling. While what we actually know now after studying and working with some of the fastest and highly innovative companies is that you need to do the exact opposite. The to lead an organization to bigger impact is to remove the need of day-to-day leadership and to give it a different role. Sometimes I compare it to leading like a gardener, right? If you want your grass to grow faster, what will not work is that you go start pulling on the grass and see if it can come out of the ground faster, right? What you need to do is you have to nurture the soil, give it water, also set the boundaries, cut any weeds, and remove any obstacles for growth. So this type of leadership style is far from new. Like it's been talked about for years, but by changing your own approach to leading an organization, you can have outsized results. And the book will cover things like different practices for decision making, different practices for empowerment, how to create an organization where there is a high alignment so everybody understands what the strategy is and what it means, but also a high level of autonomy, helping teams to become autonomous and able and capable and empowered to make decisions themselves. And by being more involved in setting the stage rather than in the work, a leader can create the conditions for radically better outcomes. So that's the premise of the book.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in terms of the future of organizations, do you we may think of organizations as large organizations with many people, but how does the possibility look like that there will be huge organizations but with very few people, and that is the
Oh,
way they will control. Just like you see, Uber has no car of its own,
yeah,
Airbnb
yeah.
does not have houses, all these facilities of their own. In the same way, you see, family trusts, all these places are controlling the, all the bigger companies. And after some time, with the help of AI, already job cuts are happening almost
Hmm.
every day. And, all the big companies. So one day they will just say that, listen, we will have a big company in whatever form it is, but with very few number of people, and that will be controlling a lot of our
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
our lives because of the type of control that they
Yeah.
have. That how does this possibility look like to you? And it will answer your question also, that they are all decentralized. Nobody goes to office, but it is all a part of a bigger plan of control rather than
Yeah.
decentralization. Actually,
I mean, of course, this is a dark scenario. Some elements are already true. The first thing I thought about when you said that was that I think Instagram, when it was sold to Facebook for $1 billion, if I get my facts right, were a team of less than 10 or 15 people. So even a decade ago, technology allowed us to create hugely valuable propositions and attract huge numbers of users without a lot of people involved. I'm somehow glad that the big tech companies are all creating their own version of AI that will compete to each other. Because if it would have really been only just one company that wins everything, it would be even more scary. Like there is this risk of a winner takes all, like with Google, for example. Like there are some competing search engines out there, but they're like almost irrelevant, which gives them extreme position of power. Yeah, I mean, time will tell. I don't know what will happen. I'm still optimistic that in the end, um, it's like with every new technology, right? When the steam engine was introduced in the industrial age, a lot of workers that were blue collar workers that were working every day with their hands got irrelevant as well. But somehow we've been able to overcome that obstacle through, of course, initial cuts. But then we created more education for people. We got people more less physical jobs and more fulfilling jobs that it doesn't rely on human power. So hopefully over time AI becomes a similar tool where people are capable of more, and it gets accessible for everyone, and everybody gets educated in how to use it and how not to use it. But again, it's super early stages in terms of the technology. It has broken through into the mainstream recently, but even when I grew up, when I started studying computer science, that must have been 25 years ago. Yeah, at least. Um, there was already AI. So it's a long term thing. We should look at it in the long term perspective. But I agree, like the combination of the capital markets, the interest rates going up means automatically less access to funds, more firings. But I also think people have too high of an expectation of what AI can do in this moment. Like I think we're overestimating in certain respects, and also underestimating in other respects what AI can do.
Absolutely, absolutely. I get your point, and that's a sort of a hope, a very good thing, a thing that one can hopeful for the future. But as you said, let's see how the future unfolds. As of now, organizations, leaderships are certainly facing a lot of questions, a lot of
Yep.
challenges, as it is also in the case of employees. So let's see how it all pans out. But there is so much to understand from you, so much to learn from you. There will be a lot of things that people can learn from your new book that's going to come out soon. So, for all those people who would want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, they can go to unblocked.works/book, where they can sign up to get updates for when the book is released later this year, or they can go to jurriaankamer.com, which is my first and last name combined, and there's more information there as well. Happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter, and always happy to hear from people in India.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.